So my little cousin is interviewing me on his podcast, and so you know, I'm bugging because this is like really my first time really interacting with him to this degree as an adult, and we're doing this interview, and it's like it's an interview about the things that I've done. I'm the subject of the interview, but it's also like a reacclimation of two close family members. You know, I used to love me some of this kid, like for real. This is my motherfucker right here, my baby boy. You know, and he just had his son, his 3-year-old son up there, looking like him when he was that age. It's just bugged out. But you know, we do this interview and we're talking, and like he said earlier, we've gone off script because he is, you know, he's learning things, you know, about me, or we're just touching on things that we haven't had the opportunity to talk about as adults, you know, stuff like that. So this is really interesting. But what I was saying is that
you're doing a podcast with family when are you living right now, or are you recording for yourself? Right?
I'm recording. I'm recording.
I could on my wireless headphones. I could hear what you were saying. I'm like, I'm gonna get him back for this. He called me that name twice.
Chelsea. Oh,
I mean, I sincerely apologize
love
for
the hell out of you, man.
So we are definitely off script here at the.
I used to come and see you. I used to come and see you after school, like every day, bro.
Yo, here's the crazy thing, right? So I vaguely remember that, right? Let me give you my perspective, right? My dad, Uncle Bookie, Jay, and I can't.
You resemble Bookie a lot.
People tell me that a lot.
You do. You resemble him a lot.
People tell me that all the time.
Yeah, y'all look like Uncle Tommy.
That I've also heard that. I've also heard that I look like Senior's dad a little bit, who I've only ever seen one picture of.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Uncle Thomas Lorick.
I saw one picture of him. He was dappered out. My dad was wearing a quintessential, I believe it was late 70s outfit, the tight jeans, hat turned up. That's why I usually wear mine's turned up like that. And
right.
But I remember I used to come home. So I went to school in Midtown, and I would come home from PS 191 every once in a while, and I would bump into one of you guys. It was either you or Jay or Jamal, and life was hard for your boy, everyone, for the fans that hold up TV. I was not born with what you would call the swag, as the kids say. People called me Foots from my own generation. They often told me that my feet got around the corner before I did. Very awkward kid. Typically, what happens when you're a nice kid, you're very awkward. Yeah. But I would have these shining moments.
You got the feet from your father.
Yeah,
Mr. 1313.
But every once in a while, I would have a cool moment, right? And I remember one time when I was younger, you and Jay were in front of that bar that used to be on right off of 115th. You know what I'm talking about? It was the bodega, and it was a little bar.
Of course.
Yeah.
We grew up in there, man. That's the Moonlight. You
yes.
read about. So you said you haven't read Raised by Wolves?
No, I have read Raised by Wolves. Yes.
Oh, I hadn't read it when you get to your friend. Go ahead.
I hadn't read it. I hadn't read it.
So you read a lot about the Moonlight. There's a good amount during that where I discussing that period of my life. There's a good amount of the Moonlight because the Moonlight was
the name of that. That's the name of that bar, the one on 15th.
Yes.
I thought the Moonlight was the one further up, like towards 125th Street, the one that just got closed down.
115th Street, 7th Avenue on the downtown side.
You guys came out of there one day, you and Jay. You guys could have been in the bar or in the bodega, and like I literally just got through being messed with by some kids. Like I'm talking about, like I got off the train at 116th to try to not let them see where I was getting off the train so they wouldn't mess with me, and I was walking from 116th to 2 train, and they followed me all the way there, and I'm just like clenching my comic books because that's what they wanted. They wanted my comic books, and I was like, "You're not getting these. Like, you're gonna have to beat me half to death." My mom bought me these comics. I'm not giving them up. And I literally turned the corner, and I believe it was either, my memory's fuzzy on this, it was either Jay or Jamel, but you were there. And I turned the corner, and you were like, JR, what's going on? And like, I turned back around, and those kids were gone. And that was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, from my perspective, there were many moments like that. Obviously, I say this to my brother a lot, but you had long since your life as an adult had already begun, right? Like, so you were more of a, and it tends to happen in big families. You were that cousin, right? I would hear fables and stories. You should try to do these things. This is what your cousin's doing, that type of stuff. And it was never to disparage. Just like, hey, he's doing this. There's a way for you to do these same things too. And I just remember when the book finally did come out, there was a sense of like a real sense of pride for me. There was also other stuff, obviously, where it was like, I don't need to read it. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't need to read it. Obviously, I had to read it. It was just time. But I can't imagine after reading it how good you felt writing it. Now, I want to shift a little bit, and I'm going to try to get back to my professional. I'm gonna try to get back into my professional. Just let me get one professional thing out, and we can go back to being family. So you complete the book. The book is published. It's almost prophetic in the sense that you would go into the work doing criminal reform work, because I've read a lot of books about the hood, quote unquote, right? But I haven't read books. Are you putting up a baby picture of me?
No. No. I'm just getting I'm getting you on there. Oh, okay. So they're hearing your voice. I'm gonna be able to see you.
I've read a lot of books about the hood, but your book, at the end of it, you give us a chance to see that there's a way out, and that you're telling this story, and then you go into work doing criminal reform. How much of what you wrote in the book plays into what you're trying to do now and what you're doing now? I don't even want to say what you're trying to do now, like in the criminal reform space.
I would say everything.
Right.
See, what I'm able to do, which is penetrate people's psyches, people who are not typically able to be reached by mainstream means. Mm-hmm. I penetrate the psyches of those types of people. In prison, I taught or teach, because we're back now, doing it digitally for now because of the COVID thing or whatever. But what I teach is critical thinking to violent offenders.
Right.
Right? Because if you can impact the thinking of people who have that degree of antisocial behavior, they don't know it's antisocial behavior, because in the environments that we've come up in, they're not antisocial. They get the same type of praise and response and earn you the same type of accolade and social currency as pro-social behavior does in the mainstream world. Right. Right? The more decent things you do in the mainstream world, the better people think of you and speak of you and so forth, theoretically. And so, in the streets, it's the other way around, right? Up is down in the streets. So to be able to penetrate that is something that you cannot learn in a classroom to the degree that I'm able to do it.
Okay.
Violence interruption. I was doing violence interruption while being violent. I was in the streets selling hardcore narcotics and stopping people from robbing people, stopping people from shooting people, stopping people from shooting each other, all to protect my business. Did I want to see them harming one another? I had no vested interest in that. I also had no vested interest in them, not harming one another, except in that, in doing it here, where I'm operating my business that is detrimental to me. So I have to do everything I can do to protect what I've built. And so getting into people's heads and getting them to understand what is important and how to reprioritize, even in the fit of emotion, you know, it was something that I developed as part of my business model.
Right.
You know, so to then grow, getting back to what I was saying earlier about the reading and how the first book was Monster, but the next book was also given to me by my ex. The next book was Women Who Love Too Much, or either Women Who Love Too Much or Facing Codependence. One of those. I think it was Women Who Love Too Much. And then after that, it was a stream of self-help and personal development books.
Right.
Because I was finding real answers in these books. I was able to have conversations. I was able to have interactions with these books that I wasn't able to have with anybody else, especially at that point in my life. At that point in my life, this was after my mom had passed. This was after, you know, the head of our family had gotten arrested after 30 years. And, you know, I was with, you know, like fully with my crew. I had a separate entity of individuals that I ran with. They were known as Sex, Money, and Murder. We were known as Sex, Money, and Murder. You know, you know, I was a part of my family clan, obviously, but when my uncle got popped, I just naturally, you know, I was already attached to that entity, and so it just became all about that entity, and that was that. And you know, we were spread all over the Midwest, Northeast, Southeast. You know, pretty widely. So I didn't really have people to communicate with about where I was in my personal journey. And where it was like, I was thinking about things in a very different way. I was seeing the choices and the things that culminated into my life in a different way. And I had no one, you know, I was thinking about it in a different way, feeling a different way, and I had no one with whom to engage to kind of bring these thoughts into some clear space and, you know, really unpack them, as they say. So the books became that, and I read hundreds of them, self-help books, and, you know, personal development, and, you know, codependence and dysfunction, and, you know, and because of that, I became clinically aware. So I had the practical, real-world experience from being in the streets to understand how people in that space and in that condition, because I was in that space and in that condition, just because of the benefit of having had those two generations before me of people who lived this life, as opposed to the people who were around at that time running around the streets. A lot of them didn't come from that at all. They came from regular people, and it just, you know, influences caused them to have these existential crises that they turned into drug careers that didn't last very long for most. And for those it didn't last as long as the prison sentence or the death sentence that they got.
Right.
And so now I had a clinical understanding, you know, reasonable degree of clinical understanding about my own behaviors, and thus a lens into the behaviors of other people who were in that space and in that stage in their experience. And I am able to use that and reach people who are, in most instances, unreachable. You know what I'm saying? So that is a long way of answering that question. Yeah, did I find any of the stuff that I put in my book to be useful or practically applicable in what I'm doing today as far as prison education is concerned? And thus, prison education is another way of saying social reform.
Right.
Right? Because until you are able to educate those in our society who are not able, through the lack of understanding or maybe some clinical or even neurological condition, they're not able to assimilate in a way that doesn't create ills in our society.
Right.
Until you're able to reach those people and help those people to become more pro-social, you really can't reform society. You know, it has to be from the bottom up.
What,
you know.
Let me just talk to you about something, man. So your Mind Plug series, right? And the reason I asked this question, there's about go check out the website too, folks.
Time to plug Mind Plug.
When I'm watching the Mind Plug series, and I'm listening to you talk about thinking critically about life situations and how to deal with things with a pragmatic approach.
Mm-hmm.
That thought process and sharing that with people, do you ever find that, like, trying to be that sounding board for people, and for lack of a better term, so don't take the sound on Cavario, folks. This is me saying this, not Cavario. There are hard-headed people in this world, and being a sounding board of reason, saying something like, hey, you should think critically about that, or you should try to divorce yourself from your emotions, especially in our community. What is the reaction or pushback you get from trying to share these type of messages? And maybe not to the brothers and sisters in prison, but just the cats on the street. What is that reaction like?
I used to get pushback when I was in the street trying to communicate these perceptions, these ideas to people. You know, I would get pushback because they thought I was telling them to stop doing what I was doing. And I wasn't telling them to stop doing what I was doing in most instances. Some instances I was telling them, definitely stop doing. I'm selling drugs. You should stop doing that. Right? But in some instances, I was really saying, the way you're doing what you're doing isn't the correct way. And it's not going to be conducive to you being successful or even healthy, if not, even breathing.
Right.
And I would get pushback from that because, like I said, they thought I was telling them, don't try to be like me. And, that you could take that away from it, because you shouldn't definitely try to be like somebody else in terms of, like, don't try to be me.
Right.
You can try to be like me if you take things away from, I took things away from your dad and all of them, and I took what I felt was useful and productive, and I incorporated that into, my way. But I was telling them, this isn't for you, and that was sounded to them like you'll never be good enough, because in this environment, this is as good as it gets, right?
Right.
Now today, I don't really get pushback. The pushback is people constantly, they constantly come at me, seeking to have me solve their dilemmas, and magically, like, basically by just saying, okay, that's what the problem is. All right, 1 and 1. All right, that's 2. The answer to that is 2. And in most instances, I mean, the issues that people are having are pretty common and widespread. They're all being impacted by the same social construct. So they're all dealing with, for the most part, the same paradigm, the same false paradigm, right? So they're all pretty much responding varying degrees of the same way. There are so many dynamics that human beings have, personality types and scenarios and so forth. I've been on the planet more than half a century. I've seen them. So when people do present situations to me, I've dealt with the situation dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times. So I can point it out and say, this is, what I say. And it's easy for me to do that for other people because I have no emotional attachment to whatever the circumstances are. Right. Look at it very practically and say 1 and 1 is 2. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how close you and 1 are. You know what I'm saying? Right. This particular 1 and 1 is adding up to 1 or 0. Bad math. You should subtract yourself from this equation. Right. And I would just, I would just never get any moment to myself if I didn't push back. But yeah, that's what happens. I push back. People don't really push back anymore. You know what pushback looks like now? It looks like ask me a question, get an answer that you understand to be viable, and then avoid me for a duration of time until you think I forgot that I told you that because you didn't do it.
Oh yeah. Typical avoidance. Class A avoidance. You made
and come back with another dilemma and hope that I don't remember that you called me before and what they call those people, assholes.
Yeah. Spiritual vampires. Yes. No, assholes. I mean, I set you up on that. And listen, I know you're not pretending to be anyone's pope. I know that, and I respect that about you. And that's the thing I found out most about watching your content. There was one video that really stood out to me in the Mind Plug series. You were helping a young brother who was getting ready to do a video, and it was a situation where someone didn't show up on time. And I can tell that in that awkward moment, it was like, okay, well, when are you showing up? Let's work together. Let's try to solve the solution. And I think that that's something that sometimes is an art that isn't practiced enough. But again, I'm not going to make you responsible for solving the world's problems, but I'm going to put you on the hot seat because this is the Hold Up TV. So we are in the post-George Floyd era right now, right? There's a lot of emotion going around, a lot of people upset. Not just because of George Floyd, but because of things that have happened prior to George Floyd and things that will probably continue to happen. But your worldview, though, seems to stand in stark contrast to a lot of emotional and what I would assume seems like disingenuous emotion, according to your worldview. And I'm not asking you to solve the world's problems, but in this instance, what were you thinking during the George Floyd situation? What was the first thing when you saw the footage? What came up for you? And I'll tell you why I asked that question. I'm leading us somewhere. Anywhere but Chubsy Upsy. That's where I'm leading us away from.
I do have a picture. I got some Chubsy Upsy pictures. I used to take a lot of pictures of you. So I was saying a few moments ago about the relatively limited variations of human behavior and reactions and interactions and experiences and shit like that. It's like there's but so many of them, and there's just more or less of this. So when I seen that, I was like, I wasn't looking at this white cop label on this, black label, man that, looks like he's probably pretty big, so he was probably scary to cop or whatever have you, without having an idea about the personal connections, like them knowing each other and all that type shit. And I just looked and I seen two human beings in a society that perpetuates sick, twisted, sadistic, narcissistic ideas and props them up and gives them so much praise. It's like that show American Gods, and the premise that the gods came into existence because of people's belief or need to believe in something And by doing so, being who they truly are, creating these omnipotent, powerful beings, because they give that to them. That is what this society perpetuates. And that guy was just a narcissistic, just a punk looking to be validated to me. Because I don't subscribe to the general paradigm. Mm-hmm. I don't see things through that filter, and thus, end up with the same perception as everybody else. I put my stimuli through a critical filter, and I take it down to a more human, level, and I'm not going to, just get caught up in this superficial. Oh, it's a white cop and he's just on a black guy's neck because that's just what it's like. That's human beings. The things I've seen human beings do to one another.
Right.
Like, it ain't got nothing to do with him being white or him being black as much as it has to do. That's what y'all see because that's the depth of your vision. That's the depth. That's what you want to see, and that's all you're interested in seeing. But there's so much more to that shit. There's so much more to it, than just, it's just simply he's white and thus this way, and he's black and thus will be subjected to this, whatever. Because for one, I've never had that experience. Was in the street for almost 20 years, on blocks, in spots, like every day. Never had a bad interaction with a cop in my life. Had many, many, many run-ins with the police. Never had a bad experience with a cop in my fucking life. But I didn't generally have bad experiences with people in my life. And when there was a bad experience, it was bad for them, experience for me. That's the truth. That's just what it is. Yeah. So I understood that it's human, the inability of human beings to interact with one another in a harmonious way because it's so fucking narcissistic. And when that shit begins to unleash itself in people who have probably, restrained themselves more often than they haven't throughout their lives, that's why a lot of cats become cops, because they felt disempowered throughout their lives. Right? For me, because I did not restrain myself. You know how somebody does something at different points in your life, when you were in different places in your life, and somebody did something, you'd be like, yo, I want to do. You remember feeling like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I did it. Every time. I laid motherfuckers out everywhere. In movie theaters, on trains, in cabs, on the streets, in clubs, everywhere. Fuck with me, I dropped your ass. That's the truth. Anybody who knows me and was around back then, they'll tell you that's the truth. So by the time I got to a point where I started to get some understanding about the behavior and what it really was motivated by and what it really was indicative of, I had already exercised that shit to the fullest degree. I didn't have any pent-up aggressions. My aggressions weren't pent up, I let go. I found opportune moments where I would be the righteous one. I never did anything to anyone that didn't really make it very clear. Yeah, I'm not going to listen. You're going to have to make me feel something. I make sure that that's the case.
Right.
And I make them feel something. And it's always worked out for me.
But that's the thing that I think that's lacking, right? It's funny that that's a term now, right? You know, we before my son exploded on himself over there, and I had to cut the video. We were talking about general
He's trying
apathy.
to play my little cousin out.
We were talking about general apathy, and I asked the question, how responsible would you hold hip hop? You know, and I guess I'll make the distinction just for argument's sake. Obviously there's hip hop, and then there's stuff like mainstream rap, right? I'm not sure I would throw Tribe Called Quest in the same tank as I would throw other brothers. You know, like people who are just telling a story of the sake of telling a story. The young man that you held up on, who was his first magazine premiere was on your magazine. I think he might be the exception to the rule, as opposed to
exception to which rule?
If I'm to believe everything that I hear about that brother, and I'm not gonna shout him out because I don't get paid by his channel or anything like that. But not all of it was story. You know, some of it was and some of it wasn't. And he was like moving around in places where I guess he's allowed to say the things that he says, and that's people have always said in certain spaces, why does he get away with these things? And I've always heard, I'm like, well, there's only usually one type of person that can get away with stuff like that. But we're talking about general apathy. From my side of the table, I would say that the apathy does play a lot into the subculture of hip hop. What do you think? Is that something that we hold them accountable for, or is it something that it's each person's choice to join into that?
Choice. Where does choice come from?
Free will. And
if a person is not made aware or is being developed in an environment, a circumstance where they're not aware of the full birth of their free will, like they don't know how much they can change about their circumstances or their experience. They have a very limited degree of understanding what their power really is, because that's what free will is. It's a power, right? Power to create whatever circumstance you will, and it's not free, but you do have volition. And so for a person to be able to make a choice, they have to be cognizant of the fact that they can make a choice. But if you've got such a restrictive culture that is so dictatorial, if you're going to be this, then you have to be this way, right. And you have to act this way, and you have to do this, and you have to espouse these ideas, and that is the only way that you can be stamped as being this. Now, why do you think that there are people, and you've probably seen this, there are people who have seen some of my stuff online, and they're all in the comments, all in their 17 and 19 and 24 and 32-year-old glory. Yeah. Just got to the planet. Just got to the planet. I done lived a whole other life since they've been born.
You're a good looking other life. You're a good looking 39-year-old. I'll tell you that much, man.
I thank you. I thank you, sir. So, I'm like, they're saying, "Oh, this can't be true. This guy can't have done this," and it's like you said that based on what unit of measure?
Right.
What criteria? What are you using to make that determination about what the probability or possibility of what the hell it is I could have actually done is or isn't? It's rap. Rap is your measurement. So you have no fucking idea what you're talking about at all. You should just be sitting there and either listening or not, but you definitely shouldn't be commenting.
Right.
Shouldn't be commenting, but that's the whole attraction to that whole platform that hold those types of platforms. The fact that they get to do that, they get to interject without having to be accountable. That's the culture. That's part of the structure that they are in. So I don't know about how much they're choosing not to be, not to be empathetic, or caring, or whatever. I don't know how much they're choosing it. I don't think they're consciously choosing any goddamn thing. I think they're just washed away for the most part in a wave. Trying to hold on to some semblance of validity or something. It's a low self-esteem thing. That's what we have. We have a culture of low self-esteem and all the things that come from it.
I see. This is the interesting thing, man. I'm gonna have to edit a lot of this stuff out, but this is I can't have people like. But here's the interesting thing about it. So you work with people in prisons, right? I used to work at a treatment center, and I would have people coming back from doing maybe 7, 8, 10, and they would get into a drug rehab program or behavior modification program, and they would come to the treatment center ready to make that life change, right? So that framework that had led them to prison. It's funny that we brought up the term the nature of a thing is the nature of a thing. And you also hear the old adage, the same thinking that got you in will not be the same thinking that gets you out. So by the time they reach the treatment doors, they're ready to let go of that old framework, and they're ready to embrace a new framework, even if sometimes they slip, they fall, maybe, but they'll keep trying at it. And we were talking about the cultures of low self-esteem. From a man that's been around and done it, what does it take to get us from that place, right? Because we can't all go through the system. But what would it take to get us from that place? we shouldn't go through the system.
They try, though.
What does it take to get us from that place, in your estimation, to a place where we're willing to let go of that old framework? Because your answers are deep. And I'm not going to say they're broad. Woo!
This is in arm's reach because this is what I'm currently reading.
Right.
This, like the experiences I've had in my life, gives me insight that helps me to be effective in what it is that I seek to do, which is the answer that I would give to your question. What made the difference for me, what I've said, the reading, the exposing myself to the information, just to give more of a enthusiastic response. Because I know I say the reading, and there'll be some people who'll be like, oh, shit, oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. And it's not because, they necessarily can't read, it's because they know they won't.
Yeah.
It's a discipline,
right?
It's a discipline. And by the way, the sound effects in the back are courtesy of my dog. So if he's not coughing, he's snoring, or if he's not gagging, he's snoring and shit. But yeah, man, that's what made the difference for me, bro. That's what made the difference. It was exposing myself and recognizing that what you just said, that adage that you just shared, the fact that as Dr. Stephen Covey, the author of Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, said, the degree of thinking that got you into your trouble will not be sufficient to get you out of it.
Right.
You have to think more, or better, is paraphrasing. But my thing that I adapted from that understanding, is that what you know can only take you as far as it's taken you. If you want to go further, you will have to learn more. I mean, plain and simple. And when I share that with people, I've gotten into giving them, especially when I'm talking to brothers, in that space where they're somewhere between, 17 and 35. I'll be saying, like, imagine you got a brand new Bugatti, free and clear. It's your joint, 2021. $2.5 million. You go to the gas station, you get you 111 octane, right? You fill that tank up, spend that little $60, $70. You got 111 octane in this day and age. It's probably going to be closer to about $100, $120.
If you're not in California, yes.
Right. If you're not in California, which I just was for a month. So
brutal.
So now you riding down the highway, you riding down the street, you looking good, you feeling good, and you bend some corners. You hit the gas a couple of times, so a motherfucker what it do. And you pass about 5, 6 gas stations. Because you want to make sure that you hit this corner, hit that corner, high traffic time, whatever. You make sure everybody can see this vehicle. This vehicle's me. And before you know it, you over on the side of the road, the light on. And you're like, well, you know what? I still got the Gotti, nigga. It's $2.5 million, nigga. I'm gonna sit here on the side of the road. You know what I'm saying? Just play this shit, nigga. Niggas ain't got to know. Niggas never think I'm fucked up like this with this motherfucking Bugatti. And a motherfucker just be riding by you in Hondas, riding by you in Camrys, because they gassing up. He's still like, nigga, old Toyota driving ass nigga. It's big nigga shit here, boy. And before you know it, your 2021 is 20 years old. You still standing around talking about, yeah, nigga, motherfucker Bugatti, nigga, I was the first nigga with it. Niggas is flying, niggas is going by and shit flying.
Right.
You trying to get by on that one tank of gas because you got a Bugatti. So, it's like they get it. They go, so Bugatti is my brain. Yes, your brain is a Bugatti. Times a million, times a trillion. The Bugatti was created from a brain. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but it does not matter. It does not matter because if you don't continually fuel that thing up, keep that thing running, you can't keep it up. If you don't keep it up, then it will eventually fall apart and it'll stop running and you'll be just sitting there and, life will be what life will be. Which won't be much of nothing. And then, they get it, and that is, as simplistic as that is one of the ways that I relate some relatively sophisticated ideas to people who are not accustomed to thinking in a sophisticated manner. It's pretty, I want this. This is available to me to do to get it. And I won't think about whether what I will be getting will be worth what I will be risking, even if nothing happens. They don't get that way of thinking. Obviously, is not conducive to a being down the road, and they don't understand that just because you didn't get screwed, the first 20 times you did, doesn't mean it's not a bad idea. Their thinking is, like I said, it's unsophisticated. And they see so much of that they just figure this is the way to be. This is the way everybody is. This is our paradigm. This is our shared paradigm. Everybody's jumping off off the roof into the pool and hoping that there'll be water and they get there. Mm-hmm. So I see that as a fool's folly, but it's common. So I feel comfortable making the decision too. That my brother made, that my uncle made, that my father made, and all of them. I'll see soon, either on the other side of this hill or in jail. But it's like you got an uncle, a father, and a brother in prison, and you're doing well. Like, what does that result from? Where does that kind of thinking come from?
Right.
It comes from the group. It comes from the ethos. It comes from the common surrounding. And the only way to penetrate that, the only way to circumvent that is to introduce information to expose yourself to new different things. You know, I'm reading this right here, and I bought this months ago. I found it in one of my cars the other day, and I took it out. I don't remember what it was specifically I wanted to read in it, but something. So, and I'm reading this, and this article is about how female CEOs are being targeted because a lot of them are being removed from the companies that they create. And it's like, from the perspective of, and then they wrote this article and the people that participated in the making of the article, it seems pretty bad.
Right.
When you talk. But, I expose myself, like, there's no practical, like, there's nothing immediate about the information in terms of the story that comes up under. I'm not looking to do business with a female started company and looking at their success track record. I'm not venture capitalized, doing venture capitalist work. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm exposing myself to information that if I wasn't making a deliberate effort to be exposed to it, nothing that is designed to capture my attention would ever drive me towards it or expose it to me. That is key. Understanding that is key. Understanding that there is information beyond what is being laid in front of you that is pertinent to your existence. And understand that information, you have to go and get it. And it's everywhere. And it's not about, what it is as much as that you're exposing yourself to it. There are concepts that I picked up from things that I'll take a biology concept and apply it to chemistry.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's just to use those as analogies, but you can there's a limitless number of things that's applicable to. I've learned things from the street that I've taken into the psychological and educational space. You know what I'm saying? Like straight from the street. From, if you read Raised by Wolves, you read about me doing things like going in and taking over neighborhoods systematically,
right,
without busting a single shot.
Just
in cities that I was not from.
Right.
And your brother was with me for a lot of that. He witnessed me do a lot of these things, side by side, right by me. Not saying much. You didn't really want your brother to start saying anything because something extreme was not too far behind him starting to engage. Or he would just stand, and he was young. I was still training him, and he would stand there and just be quiet. But the moment he felt compelled that he had to stand up and defend me, it's all bad. All bad, But it's what it is, bro. And look at him now.
Right.
Look at him now.
Right.
At one of the top Ivy League college institution in the fucking country.
Right.
Not only getting educated, but also educating them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, having earned his bachelor's degree, and then now, getting his master's and about to then get his PhD,
and being a proponent for change, and that's
right. Like, he's talking about urban planning. He's going to get a PhD in urban planning. We didn't even know that existed, urban planning. But then to find out what it is, and to find out that it is the hand that rocks the cradle. And people don't even know it as a title. It hasn't been promoted or perpetuated as something to be cool or sought after or, chased, valued, because the power hides.
This is going to be hard for the listening audience, so I just want to make sure, because I'm going to put this up on Anchor. Make sure you go check us out, Anchor, Hold Up TV. And you're not gonna be able to see what I'm seeing across from the screen here, man. But one of the books that Cavario held up when he was talking about exposing himself was The New Jim Crow and White Fragility. And I think it's interesting to read both those books because it will introduce you to some things regarding your history as an African American or your history as an American in general. There's one last thing I want to. I guess this is the doozy, right? So we're way off script, folks. I'm long since stopped pretending that I'm a serious journalist and I'm just a little cousin talking to an older cousin at this point. Bob Marley made.
I think people appreciate that too.
Exactly. Bob Marley famously made his song, Redemption Song. For me, mine's was.
I got Bob on the wall right there, man. Right there. I've had that thing for 30 years.
Turn your camera a little bit to the left.
Oh, I forgot. I forgot that. I got you on a different camera.
There he is.
Right over there. Right over there. Bob Marley and Marvin Gaye, and then John Lee Hooker. John Lee Hooker was the man, so I got the best of soul, the best of reggae, and the best in blues.
These are the views held by Cavario. They do not. I agree with two of those. I'm not going to get into the blues debate. I've gotten pulled into that once, and I was like, I'm way over my head here. I just work at a CD store, man. Look, I'm trying to get you these CDs right now. But
I'm strictly old school with my blues. I'm old school, like all old school ledge.
Wait, we're talking about
John Lee is, but I'm strictly old school with the blues.
Do you not listen? Do you just predominantly listen to like blues, reggae, and because I've noticed that about you too, man. When I was working my way through your social medias and stuff like that, I was like, man, I don't think I can find one thing that was made with an 808 or drum machine. Like this is all pretty much live acoustic music that he's either talking about or appreciating. Is that where you're at right now in life, or is that always been the case?
I've always had. Remember me and your mom. When I was a kid, we were very close because as much as I was this genetically engineered gangster, I was also quite the weird.
I get that. I can relate.
So I was a kid in Harlem in the 70s listening to Kiss and Fleetwood Mac. And, later on, Black Sabbath and of course, Def Leppard and, just like I was heavy in the rock and of course, R&B, because that was the sound of my environment. But my personal sound was rock, and it spoke to me. It helped me to channel my angst. Growing up in that soup of psychopaths. It created a lot of internal tumult, bro. That's why I was so violent. I was so violent because I was being terrorized by them. They were beating me into this thing that they wanted me to be. And they saw the potential in me, and they didn't really understand the true expansiveness of what it was that I could do and be. They just knew that I was different. And so I was favored by everybody. Everybody wanted me to be around them. Everyone wanted to have me with them. So I would be with Bernard, and I would be with Steve, and I would be with Steve and Bernard. I would be Gail and Bernard. I would be, with my mother, and then her generation, those older guys, and with Al. And I was around some stone cold, hardcore, brilliant, maniacal, psychopath, gangster motherfuckers, man. Like for real, actual gangsters. Not this, sharp sticks, motherfucking bullshit that these motherfuckers run around,
Yeah.
plastic knives and shit, I got a Draco, I got a,
Who was the first person that let you be different and like didn't give you a hard time? That was definitely.
People when I was younger, people tried to give me a hard time, but I was, like I said, I was violent, so I would kick their asses, I would beat them up.
Was there
so
anyone...
after a while, by the time I was like 11 years old, it wasn't you knew better than to fuck with me. I'm gonna fuck you up. I'm an angry, capable, strong, aggressive, high energy kid. That's why all my peers were 5 to 6 years older than me, because no kid my age, people used to bring their kid in when I would come outside. And I was like 5, 6 years old. Other people with 5, 6-year-old kids, 7-year-old kids, they would take them inside, because like more than likely you're gonna end up with a bone broken, or you're gonna end up with a black eye or bloody nose or something. Because either you're gonna try to follow me doing something crazy and hurt yourself, or I'm gonna beat you up because maybe you didn't. Don't be scared. Wow, don't be a punk. Because that's what your father and them were doing to me.
But was there anyone like, all right, for me, I would leave Harlem, right? And then, I would, let me just be real. It was a girl, right? Like I had a safe space, which was a girl. It doesn't matter who it was or when it was, right? But I would be able to go there and we would listen to. So for my generation, listening to rock, I would listen to a lot of like Exploited. I would listen to punk rock. I would listen to some of the stuff my mom listened to. I really started listening to a lot of house music and techno, because living in Chicago, I'd found out about this stuff, and I was like, man, I really like this music. A lot of deep, soulful house and stuff like that. But I would go to this one girl's house. I would leave Harlem. I would leave with jeans and a Yankees jersey on, with the hat on, with my Nikes on. I would get to about 125th Street, go into any place that would let me use the bathroom, take all of that stuff off, put on my raver clothing, right? Because now I'm far enough away from the neighborhood, and I would go hang out with this girl, and I would just sit there and we would listen to Bjork, we would listen to rock music and stuff like that, and like that was my safe space.
Like Bjork, man, she was the shit.
Yeah, exactly. That was my safe space to do that. I realized that it might have Human Behavior, best song ever made, man.
Yeah.
Was there anyone like that for you back during those times, man? Like, was there a safe space where you could go and just like...
my best friend, Trevor, you don't remember him. He used to be around all the time. He's a white kid. You remember the white kid used to be with me all the time?
No. That's amazing.
He used to be with me at 15th Street and everything. He used to be selling drugs in 115th Street in that building, where, we had our operation set up right across the street from our building where we come from.
Right.
And and your father was my higher up in that operation back then, because I was like 14 or something like that. I was like 14. And Trevor used to be with me. Wife used to be with me. But he lived on the Upper West Side, 94th, Amsterdam. And his parents had a house up in Massachusetts. At that time, it was Charlemont. And then later on, they got a bigger place, like 26 acres up there in Heath. And so we used to go up there, ride dirt bikes, go up there, go skiing, go to Vermont and Mount Snow, go everywhere, just go skiing and shit like that. So I was doing shit like that, and then come back and, doing my thing, doing my thing in the street, whatever. So I was living like this dual life. Right. So I would take him into my world, he'd take me into his world, and even prior to him, I was already going down to the village, in 1979, 80, 81, because cocaine was so popular, and I had a lot of it, obviously. And so it was very, very expensive. So to have it, although I didn't see it that way, to have it was a big deal, But I didn't really see it that way because I've been around drugs all my life. So it was like, it was drugs. It was just a commodity to me.
Right.
You know, but it gave me access to a whole other world. You know, I sold drugs uptown too. I would go into Latin Quarter, Disco Fever, Club 371, talking about uptown, Garage, T Connection, all through those spots, Two Cousins, all these different spots where people would come to hang out, and every after hour spots that didn't have names. I was in more spots that didn't have names than I was in spots, but I was on my whole life though.
Right.
Back in the days when I was growing up, they were called Bucket of Bloods. It was these nameless places that people went, drank, and did whatever they did, and be in there till the sun come up the next day and shit like that. And sometimes people would get killed, and there was really no accountability because it was unofficial a business any fucking way. So. Right. Take his ass outside and leave him somewhere where he can be found. You know what I'm saying? Right. And that was that. So I grew up in places like that, and then those are the kind of places that I ended up doing my thing in. And I would do the uptown scene, Harlem and the Bronx and stuff like that. And then I would go downtown and be all in the Village and, at all these rock clubs and rock after hours. There was a spot in the Village, man, and there will probably be very few people who will remember this place because this place was like New York back then had a very serious underground club scene back then. Yeah. You remember now? This is when it was all about word of mouth. This is before the popularization of flyers. Forget about, there was no such thing as the internet, no such thing as cell phones. It was strictly like information back then barely got out of a neighborhood, let alone a city or a borough. Barely left a neighborhood. Doesn't matter how salacious it was. It didn't make it out the damn neighborhood because there was just no means. The people in the neighborhood only traveled but so far. Right. There might be one or two of them that left the neighborhood for the summer to go visit some cousin, but information didn't get around like that. So if you didn't move around, you didn't know shit. Right. So all those kids that be talking about what they was doing back in the 80s and doing this and going here and doing that, whatever, I can tell whether they tell the truth or not. There are certain nuances to that period. Only people who were actually there and not just around outside or heard about or older brother used to tell them about. I'm talking about if you weren't inside of those spots, you have no fucking idea. But if you were, you would definitely be able and you would be inclined to share those degrees of, right? Yeah. But they don't because they can't because they weren't actually there and they think that nobody that was is in earshot.
That's got to be an embarrassing type. See, it's interesting you say that, man, because it's kind of like what they used to talk about, the rap and bullshit, right? So, you hear a story, the story gets told, the story gets retold, and then by the time that the person who hears the story again, who was actually there, was like, no, that's not how it happened. There were two of us, and it actually went down like this. I imagine that you probably deal with a lot of that. But it's like it is interesting. It is interesting to me, man, because
I've had my own stories come back to me. So yeah,
I was just you just beat me to the point. I was like, at what point have you heard someone tell you your own story and you're like, that was me?
No, but I don't say anything.
You're very.
I don't say anything. I just take because the clinical exposure,
right?
That stuff is when you don't know certain things and what is you haven't been given an idea, been exposed to an idea of why certain behavior might come about, then you might be inclined to think that all the behavior you observe and that personally impacts you is because of you. You might think that you're the reason for people's behavior. Right. And you might not recognize you're a witness to behavior. You're not a cause of it, right? So having learned that, a long time ago, and accepting it, whenever people did stuff like that, I would just be like, like I don't have to say, that's my story, right? I don't have to say that.
Right.
It's like, I know it's my story. They don't, they're not thinking about the fact they've been so busy they've been so long telling people this story as their story that they don't even recognize that it's not their story. They've been saying it so long, they've made it that, I actually am the, the protagonist in this story,
You're
but
touching on some deeper undertones because I was actually listening to a podcast the other day and someone was it was an older African American professor and he was talking about the civil rights movement and he basically almost verbatim said what that experience is like for him. He's like, I've had people in this new generation come up to me and tell me about my story as if I wasn't the one there. He was like, I was the one there marching with King. He was like, I was the one there who, had to make the decision between King and X. And he was like, to hear other people tell me my story. And then when I tell them that, like, well, yeah, I was there, I know how it went down. And then have them correct me on it. I guess that's the same thing you were talking about with the people in the comments in your videos. Like, there's no way he could be there, but
right, there's no way he could have done that. And they a lot of times they do that thing where they be like, yo, he definitely lying because my father was running around, my mother was running around back then, and so basically, what they're saying is they're implying that I'm too young to have been there. Right. And it's like, damn, like there's virtually no accountability. Right. To the point where they don't even feel remotely compelled to do a little research, because a little research would reveal a good deal and give them some context. You know what I mean? There's a little research, but they don't do it. They don't do it. They get caught up in the moment. Mm-hmm. They're very, part of this culture, this narcissistic culture is reactionism. Because every thought I have and every emotion I have is validated by the fact that I had it. So thus I can impose it on anybody I want at any time I want, and there is no accountability. I do not have to worry about there being repercussions, whether they're, social or physical or whatever. I don't have to worry about that because they'll never figure out who Murder Dog 187 is. That ain't really my... Oh.
But that's it's the lack of accountability. We call that internet muscles, right? It's internet muscles, right? It's like it's
internet muscles.
It is. There's no other term to equate it to. Is that the fact? It's like it's bare muscles, internet muscles, right? And behind the obscurity, which is your parents' house that you sit down in. I had someone put a negative comment on my other channel's video, and I responded to it, and I was just like, you know what? There's safety across that keyboard, and that's all I said. And that's all I wanted to say. Like, you can say these things because you're anonymous. This is not real life.
That's right.
We're in virtual reality right now.
Well, it for a lot of the people who are inclined to do that kind of thing, it is real life because it is where they've built their existence. Good point. Their existence, the persona that they project into the world and perpetuate is on social media platforms. It's on Instagram, it's on Twitter, it's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on TikTok. They create these. These platforms and these devices has given people the ability to really recreate themselves without actually changing. Just create a narrative and perpetuate the narrative, punch in every now and then, and just perpetuate the narrative, and then garner whatever social currency you can from that. Yeah. And yeah, that's what it is. That's the all-encompassing drive.
I heard an old timer say something like that in county jail, in between booking, and the way to my bed in my dorm, and he was like, and he just looked at me and he was like, where you from, young brother? And I'm like, I'm from New York, and he's like, Oh, you came out on vacation, stayed for probation, and you know, everyone in the pod got a joke. Apparently, they said that to everyone.
Shit, came out for vacation, stayed for probation. I ain't never heard that one before. I like that.
But he literally
stayed for vacation, stayed for probation. I seen a lot of cats do that, brother.
Yeah, it's real.
Having hustled in all these different cities, I seen a lot of cats do that, man. Imagine going someplace for the first time and being there for like a day or two, and then not getting back out of the leave there and go back home, not seeing your home that you just left, and you know you don't even know. Did I cut the light off? 6 years later.
That's called Spring Break 2001 Miami for a lot of people in my circle. I'm like, man, we went down to have fun. There were 20 of us. 2 of us made it back, and I'm happy to say I'm one of those 2, man. Like, everyone else made it back eventually, but I'm like, how did this happen? I'm editing that part. I'm editing that part out, by the way.
Okay.
But this old timer said to me, "You're not editing it." This old timer said to me in that part after that joke, he was like, "Don't worry, young blood. This is county jail. You can be whoever you want to be in here. Nobody knows your story." He was like, "If you say you're level 4, the only way we'll ever figure that out is if we check your paperwork. By the way, can I see your paperwork?" And then everyone starts laughing. But it's the same way on the internet. It's like, I am who I say I am, you know, and I can do what I say I can do. And I gotta give you the respect you deserve, man. And
like they grew up in a vacuum and nobody knows them. Yeah,
no, I mean, but I gotta give you your respect, man, because in doing my research, man, the one thing I'm not gonna let you get into it, and I'm not gonna go deep into it. You have never entertained your detractors, as far as I can see.
Never.
Like, as far as I can see.
If they knew better,
they do better.
Yeah. You know, like I said, bro, the insight that my study has afforded me has given me power over me.
Right.
There's nothing that anyone can do that could cajole me into any behavior or action that I have not deemed is what I want to do. I can't be played out. That's why my ass has stayed alive, healthy, and free for 53 years. I ain't missed a decade. So I think I'm going to let a sucker talk me into the sucker trap. That's how your brother lost 10 years of his life. And I warned him and warned him and warned him and warned him. That's the sucker trap. That fool don't know. Them fools don't know. They don't know the reality of me. They don't know the truth of me. And if they did, they wouldn't volunteer for that. Nobody would volunteer for that.
Let me ask you a question. Why have you not, and this is entirely up to you to post, why how come you haven't been putting out any more content on your YouTube channel? Are you just taking a break right now, or?
Yeah, because I've been. Oh man, my man Los, it's my man. He coming home soon. He got the best barbershop in Harlem, man. Because I'd be so. I'll be so busy in the real world, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Rob, Sheree. I'll be so busy in the real world. Oh, that's my original book cover when my book was called The Hustler. That's my original book cover. Because the name of the book was The
Hustler, My Life and
Death.
And Death.
Yep. That was the original book cover. Yeah, so this is how it started. This is what people thought was look at my niggas, man. Baby Jizzle. That's a different Baby J. That was the first Baby J. Rest in peace to my other little brother, Jermaine Baby J, my brother fucking slugger. I think this is that young lady who used to, I forget her name, man. She's a young little girl, young little skinny little girl, used to get to the bag, young little thing, dark skin. I don't know whatever happened to her. Really smart. Nate Red. Yeah. So yeah, man, that's what it is though, because I got plenty of stuff, and I got plenty of stuff that I shot and that I've recorded, and Al is always like this nigga. Wow, Al, motherfucking wow, Al. Welcome home, Stan. Welcome home, brother. This nigga Al, John, Jason, my motherfucker, man. It's my brother, man. My twin, man. Rest in peace, Jason. What happened between him and him was truly tragic. This is part of the sickness of our society, of our community. The disease that they gave us: greed and desperation and ignorance. You mix greed, desperation, and ignorance. Motherfucker, man. Leland, Anthony. I forgot that young lady's name. Yeah.
Did I check you down a trip down memory lane tonight, man?
Yeah, no doubt. Barry. That's not Jack. That's Jack. Jerome. That's the father of Baby J. Jerome Harris. Baby Jerome Harris was the one that was rest in peace. But yeah, so this is where it came from. And this is my brother Estos, who designed the Don Diva, what ended up becoming the Don Diva,
emblem.
This emblem, yep. The one designed that. Yeah, man. And this wonderful lady here, who was a friend of ours, me and my ex, she used to come and visit us and stuff like that. She was a dope sister. Really, really dope sister. May she be well wherever she is. My first graphic design, Alistair. So, yep, that's where it came from. This is how it came about. And, yeah, so that's why they thought Don Diva was a magazine. And then I just told people that
You went with it. You
that
went
it
with
was.
the truth. You went with the manifested truth, man.
So, yeah. I didn't never get a chance to share that before. I'll probably put that up. I'll probably put some of this stuff up on my YouTube channel. But I've been really waiting for? I've been putting together this curriculum. My wife and I have been working on this curriculum for my my prison education program for the official. See, I was the mind plug inside the system as part of a thing that me and my guy, a guy who I was in business with for a little period of time and learned a good deal from, but we definitely had some different ideas about, honor and friendship and so forth. He came from a very fucked up family dynamic, so I attribute it to that, but did not play an honorable game. And, I found an opportunity within the opportunity. So once we were done with that, I separated myself in a very complete and total way and launched my own, independent situation to, so the official launch of the Mind Plug Academy and curriculum and everything is now, in the prison systems. We're going to be doing it remotely. Right. Now at the tablets and all that stuff in the jails and stuff like that. So we're doing it remotely. And so which is very cool. There's 21 facilities. I have access to all 21s. I can walk into any South Carolina Department of Corrections prison, at any time. I've been up in them jails at 1 o'clock in the fucking morning. In maximum security prisons at 1 o'clock in the morning. Kicking it with my dudes. My guys and my, because we had our own block.
Right.
Our block. It was an SHU that we turned into a college dorm for the worst of the worst. And did very well. One of our students, a guy who was probably the most angry inmate I'd ever seen. This motherfucker, because he was intelligent, he understood exactly what had happened to him. He had been railroaded and kidnapped, you know, and thrown away, and that's what they do, you know. So, you know, he was very, very angry and very violent towards the system and so forth, whatever, because obviously, you know, draconian sentences are violence against the public.
Right.
You know, a system that targets black and brown people and minimizes them and reduces them to a commodity that's violent. So he was cognizant of the war that he's in, and he was in the mindset to defend himself. You know, I'll put it like that. But he was very likely to do something to a fucking cop, like in terms of, you know, to a corrections officer. Very, very, very inclined. Very, very inclined. And he actually, after doing our program, he actually ended up saving a cop's, a lieutenant's, corrections officer's life. The guy was being stabbed to death, and he intervened, stopped the guy from stabbing him, got stabbed in doing it, and saved the guy's life.
Holy
Like, for him to put his life on the line, like he was a motherfucker, he could stand there. When I met him, he could stand there and watch the nicest of a corrections officer be disemboweled. That's how he felt about him. And he ended up putting his life on the line, not just in that instance, but also in the environment to do that.
Yeah, there are no rewards for saving.
His mind had changed. His mind had changed. His mind had changed. And I won't say that was all due to me, but he was like one of my top 5 students. And, you know, like, I gave him things to read. I had him teaching my classes sometime. I would start and I would go like,
you feel?
I mean, extraordinary, bro. Extraordinary. I influenced a lot of people to do things that were not in their best interest without intent because of my exposure to them of certain behaviors out of context. They were influenced. I didn't recognize that. So then I found myself later on saying, what are you doing? Why are you trying to do this? And, you know, if you continue to go down this path, you may meet the aspect of me that you never had cause to meet before. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not the only one like me out here. And you have no idea that. You think you know the degree of me, but you have not interacted with me in this space before. If you're going to get on this platform, then, you know, you're going to be exposed to another layer of this reality. And I don't think that you really want to do that. And in most cases, they really didn't want to do it. They did it anyway, and they ended up with nightmares.
But to see someone like benefit from what you're teaching them to make that change, you can't tell me that didn't make you feel like $1 million bucks, man.
Especially in contrast to what I just shared with you.
I know. One last. Can you humor me with one last question? One last question. Will we ever get? I know we have the curriculum. Will you ever do a mind plug based book, or are you already working on something like that?
I mean, this is a mind plug based book.
Hey, there it is.
Mm-hmm. And this right here is, these are 50 of my personal quotes. And it's just insight. This gives you insights and perspective and stuff like that, something to think of. Sometimes we could figure things out, but we need a point of reference. We need a point from which to begin, you know? And for me, it was those experiences I had as a child, growing up in an organized crime family, in a very dysfunctional, you know, environment, and made to accept that dysfunction as a norm, and taught to use it as a structure upon which to build a life. And I've obviously since grown, expanded way beyond that. But the foundation of those understandings and the severity of not assimilating with those understandings that I was always made to understand, the severity of that, it was absolutes. It was either you lose your mind, or you lose your freedom, or you lose your life. So every decision I was taught to make was based in extremes. It was based in the idea that the worst thing can happen from the smallest step or mistake or misthought. You know, death can happen at any fucking moment. You know, extreme failure can happen at any fucking moment. So, you know, that was the constant theme in my development. And because of that, I developed some very extreme and became hardwired for some very extreme ideas. And I used those as my foundation. It got me through a 17 and a half year career in the street on the front line, you know, not sitting back pitching packages, but on the front line, you know, being out there moving the package, running the crew, you know, pushing the work, you know, like organizing and enforcing and protecting and being, you know, being the broker when that was necessary, being the enforcer when that was necessary. Many days I was standing on the corner of some of the hottest blocks in the Northeast, on the East Coast, you know, with 2 fully loaded machine guns on my side, like nothing for entire days, you know, like taking that type of risk without hesitation. I wouldn't say without thought or regard. It was with great thought and regard. I was fully committed. I was fully committed, meaning I was ready to hold court. So, you know, even though very few people would even know that I was strapped up like that, because like, why would you need to know? And why would you want to be made aware? Sure. So, you know, when I was standing, people didn't even know. People didn't know I was standing there like that, standing there, you know, with 62 bullets at my beck. You know what I'm saying? They didn't realize, they didn't have no idea. And you know, prepared to hold court was something that I was taught. I was still in my single digits when my mother told me, you hold court. You don't let them catch you red-handed. You hold court. This is my mother telling me this now. You remember how powerful my mother was. All right? Very, very powerful lady. So when she said to me, these are correct, these mores are correct, well, they may as well be written in stone in a tablet. She said so. She said that hold court. I didn't know that not everybody was being told that. So if I heard a motherfucker, you know, got caught with a smoking gun and the police, you know, well, I hear you get caught with a smoking gun. I'm like, well, how'd you get caught with a smoking gun? You know, I put the work in, and then the police pulled up and they caught me right in. And I said, what is that? What are you talking about? Why ain't hold court? Hold court? What you talking about? I was like, what are you talking about? How you don't know that? How you don't know you're supposed to hold court? What are you doing? What's wrong with you? You just let them capture you like that, red-handed like that? And I didn't know that they weren't being told those things. I didn't know their mothers weren't telling them, the police run up on you and shoot them. I didn't know that. I thought everybody was being told the same shit. If you out here, you must be being told the same shit. Why would you be out here and you're not fully armed? So, and I had to evolve beyond that normalized, extremely antisocial behavior, you know, as a way of thinking. You know, I had to remove that from my thought habits, and I had to detach my ego. There's a very big part of your ego that becomes satiated by feeding that, and they fed it. And then when I got older, I exercised it, You know, like I said earlier, if you got out of pocket with me, I knocked your ass out at the very least. You know, I never did more than was necessary. So if knocking you out would be sufficient, then I knock you out, and I could be strapped up, and 9 times in 10 I was, but I'm not going to pull no weapon on you if there's not that degree of threat, or neither at this moment or as far as I can tell at any moment later. And I would say, based upon ultimate outcomes, I made the right decisions.
Are you in? No, you know what? No, I'm not going to ask that question. Because this has been an eye-opening thing for me. Would you be willing to come back on the show? Like,
oh, come on.
Last thing, man. Is there any project, anything upcoming, any parting words that you would want to say? Tell us about future projects that you want to plug really quickly on Hold Up TV, man.
Okay, I can talk about a few things. I got quite a bit brewing, but I can talk about a few things right now. Production, as far as visuals and content is concerned. Hip Hop Made Me is a docuseries that's going to center around the impact of the culture on the development of various people. You know, it's going to be a plethora of subject, you know, matter and subjects. You know, it's going to go, you know, every which way: politics and streets and, you know, policy and, you know, every aspect of society, so forth. Talking about their experiences and how hip hop shaped their self-perception and ultimately made them, you know, believe that they were someone other than what their circumstances may have been indicative of. And in some instances, that turned out to be an extraordinary thing. In many instances, probably more often than not, maybe, it turned out to be tragic. And the concept of this docuseries was born out of a single project that was around a guy who was running around in Atlanta in the early 2000s. And he is the guy who was responsible for the advent of the video vixen, basically strippers, you know, with these over-the-top bodies being in all the rap videos. He's the one responsible for that. And so he had a lot of girls. He was providing female entertainment and companionship for a bunch of different, you know, high-profile people. You know, the high-profile individuals in the sports arena, high-profile individuals in the music space, you know, business and stuff like that. Prominent people, with mainstream names and so forth. You know, mainstream brands and stuff like that. He was participating in fucking, you know, sex soirees with these motherfuckers, providing all the party favors and shit like that, you know. So he had a lot of things on a lot of people. And at some point, somebody who was a part of his organization, a young lady who he had brought on, she wanted to take over the operation or whatever have you. I guess she must have realized that he was really the square who had just fallen into a role. And she felt like, well, if he can do it, then I can do it. I don't need him. And she made up a story about him forcing her to be a part of this whole thing or whatever have you. And he ended up catching a human trafficking charge. Oh. And he ends up going to prison, to federal prison, for conspiracy. You know what conspiracy is, right? Yeah. What constitutes a conspiracy? In as few words as you can think.
There has to be at least 2 to 3 more players saying the same thing that goes against you.
Right. He went to prison for conspiracy by himself. There was not one other person convicted.
Oh.
So when people go around, you know, poking the bear, fucking with the nefarious ass United States federal government, basically saying, you know, look at me, look what I'm doing. I don't get it. I was like, who you think you're fucking with? Who you think these people are? You think they playing? They're not playing. You know, they bury you cockroaches. They eat you for fucking breakfast. Scarface ain't got shit on the United.
No, he doesn't. Ask all the brothers who got ad charges before they even got through the gates. Ad charge. Like,
the fuck? You breathing. You double inhale and then exhale.
So when are we gonna get that docuseries? Where's that coming to us, man?
I would say probably no later than end of third quarter. You should be seeing some things. So Mike Spade, it was what he was known as. His real name is Jim Jones. But he came home. He did 13 years on the 15 in federal penitentiary. Spent some years in solitary. This guy is not a street guy. He doesn't come from a street-orientated background and that kind of stuff like that. He believed what Too Short said. He believed what NWA said. He believed what, whoever was saying the most ego-based shit and saying it from a perspective or a position of being well in the world, he was doing whatever the fuck they say. And he created this persona out of that, born of the hip-hop ethos. You know, this Mike Spade. Mike Spade was really on top of the world for a few years. And for someone to come from, social obscurity, nothing extraordinary about his background, just an average kid or whatever, and to be able to create this personage and live this extraordinary life for this period of time and have exposure to things and access to things that he never could have imagined. And this thing is something that I never really could relate to, but this heavy preoccupation with women and their attentions. I didn't, those guys, like your father was a womanizing whoremonger, right? But there was no, like, he didn't tell me. Jesse was the one who would tell his little stories, little sexcapades, whatever. But your pops and them, Al and Charlie and Bernard and all those other influencers, those other characters. With them guys, I'd be around them when I'm like 9, 10 years old. I'm out there with them drinking and all that type of shit, whatever. They loved the fact that I was able to, drink a straight shot of fucking vodka like it was water. And I would come up, I'd come up on them and be like, they'd be standing there talking whatever, and they'd be like, what's up, Cavario? I'd be like, yo, nothing, you know what I'm saying? Little fly, little motherfucker, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Dressed like a grown-ass person, you know what I mean? And they'd be like, I got on snakeskin shoes and shark skin pants and all type of shit, you know what I mean? And it's crazy. What a bunch of crazy people. But they give me a glass. I'd be like, what's that? And he'd be like, back in the days was keep your bottle in a glass in a brown paper bag. You know what I'm saying? And I'd be like, what's that? He'd be like, you don't want none of this. You don't want none of this. You can't handle this. Just put hair on your chest, on the inside. I was like, give me some.
Oh my goodness.
They would love that because I was the dare me kid. You could dare me to do anything, I'd do that shit. I bet you can't jump from that second floor window. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a flip. I was crazy as fuck, stressing my mother out. But he'd hand me the bottle. Hand me a glass, a cup. Little white plastic, opaque plastic cups with the little indentions circular around it. Cups.
Yeah.
Somebody made $10 million.
Millions of dollars, because the way they the way they protected those cups at the corner store, like I got sent in there a couple of times. Like, they just want a cup. All right, you're not gonna give me the cup? Then you tell these motherfuckers you're not giving me the cup.
Yeah, for real. Go in there and tell the motherfuckers they give you a goddamn cup. I have to come in there.
Exactly.
Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's their store. Hip hop made me. That's gonna be something that is gonna have a serious social impact. I think. We're gonna touch on things in such a way that most people have not been exposed, and with the point of educating our community and really helping them to put their entertainment into perspective and to understand the true impact of being immersed in an idea constantly. And then let me see what else. Doing the hemp business, and I'm partnered up with a guy who created this hemp business, vertically integrated hemp business, the company's called Verde, V as in Vincent, E-R-D as in dog, E, Verde, which is green in Spanish. And it's called Verde Leaf. And it is a fully integrated, vertically integrated hemp company. So, 45 farmers between South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. Some of them have as many as 2,000 acres. So everything that they produce on the hemp side, they produce exclusively for Verde. And then, Verde owns the crops. And then you have the manufacturing of the derivatives and extracts that come from them. Internally. Then there is the packaging, marketing, and distribution of those products. And we have that, and so, and we have the first CBD infused sparkling water, and so it's the first fully vertically integrated company that exists, and it is the first producer of the first CBD infused sparkling water, and which is being distributed right now as we speak, and advertising, marketing, stuff like that. And then we're moving into, as some recent advents have come about, we're moving into the other space as well, in a way that is very unique, based upon some advents that will be coming about in the next few months, and the whole new market, the whole new unexplored market, and we will have an opportunity. We have the opportunity because of the fact that we are, we're right time to really take advantage of that opportunity, which is going to be extraordinary. It'll be something that people will be talking about soon, but they're not talking about it now, which is fucking remarkable to me. Really remarkable. Of course, the Mind Plug Academy, and creating these digital lessons and trainings and so forth, and being able to bring other people in to do what it is, not to do the Mind Plug curriculum, to teach the Mind Plug curriculum, and to spread that. I've done my work in prisons in Boston. I've done my work prisons in all over Kentucky. You know, spoken in those places as well. The need for what it is that I do is something that goes beyond the prison system. You know, but the prison system is what I think is one of the best proving grounds for the effectiveness of the curriculum. And I believe that it will translate into other institutional setups like schools, high schools, just as well as it does in prisons. And I mean, by the things that set up, we already know that if it works structurally inside the schools, and then it's the same. It'll work in the prison system, you know, in terms of, you know, or how things operate and stuff like that. That's why this system is designed to, like, the school situation just kind of gets them ready for jail, you know. Yeah. Kind of like the infrastructure is kind of like the same thing. So yeah, those three things, and then, you know, I've got the books or whatever, and the books will keep coming out. You know, I've got books written that I haven't published yet, and I'm also working on books for other people. This was a book that I helped a brother put together. This was his story, and I did the whole, you know, whole edit, restructuring, because, you know, they're not writers or what have you. These guys who have stories that they feel compelled to share, and so I helped them put it into a format that is consumable, and you know, I helped them set up their publishing companies, you know, help them to, you know, get all of the necessary components to be able to, you know, be a publishing company, and, you know, get all of the infrastructure for that, and help them with the artwork, and, you know, help them put the whole thing together. But once I'm done with them, they do have the insight and the information to be able to do it for themselves. This is another brother, a friend of mine who just came home as well.
What's the name of the book?
Okay. This is Aurora in Harlem. And it's based on true events, and very, very, very much based on true events. My man Unique just came home from doing 26 years in federal penitentiary. His indictment in 1993 was $432 million. So today that was like $1 billion. And he actually beaten life before. He caught life when he was like 15 and sat in Clinton until he was like 19. And then a jailhouse lawyer helped him to get out. Helped him to get out. And so he has an extraordinary story, very extraordinary story. I mean, he's a precursor to the Jamaica posses. You know, he's part of that generation of Jamaicans that came over from Yard and brought the culture that had been created within the political sphere out there between the two factions, the PNP and the JLP. And they were doing over there, when they had to run over here, once one political party won over the other, and the ones in the opposing party who were not in power had to get the hell out of there. Yeah. And so they all ran here to the States, different parts of the States. And they brought their subculture with them, which was based in cowboy pictures. They like cowboy flicks. That's their thing. So over here was gangster movies, over there was cowboy movies. So they was into, you know, the gunslinger type shit, whatever, you know, Eastwood and that type of shit.
I know. Dead. Yeah, I know. I'm not laughing out of disrespect. I'm just getting flooded with memories of stuff.
And this is another joint. I now own this, but this gentleman here, this is my uncle, Little Melvin. He's a guy who He is the guy that The Wire is made about. The Wire is his life. The cop who busted him in '84, a homicide detective who was part of the first federal city task force that ever came to Maryland, first in Maryland. And I convinced him. It took me a few years, but I convinced him to write this book. And he wrote it. He published it in 2010. I had it printed down in Atlanta, where I had Raised by Wolves printed. And when he passed, I inherited it. So now I'll be re-releasing it and re-releasing it under my flag or whatever. And of course, this is the Old Gangsters Young Guns. That's the Don Diva book, essentially.
Yeah.
And in this book, it's not just stories of people who were in the streets and whatever have you, and had these extraordinary experiences, whatever. It's about the psychology and the other mitigating factors that contribute to the choices that the people in these stories made, to put their stories into perspective. Because obviously, by judging by the feats that some of these guys had achieved, they were obviously gifted, very, very gifted geniuses. Right. They created Fortune 500 corporations without the benefit of a formal education of any kind, and ran them very proficiently. The only thing that was not in their favor was the fact that it was an illegal corporation and they were black, and they were too successful in that space, So there's a lot of currency, a lot of heavy insight in this book, in Old Gangsters Young Guns. There was a time when I felt like this was the most inspired writing I'd ever done. It was at that point, it was the most inspired writing I had done to date, even in comparison to Raised by Wolves, because Raised by Wolves was, it was just my story, just my story told through the filter of an understanding that came from the other things I exposed myself to. But Old Gangsters and Young Guns is also my story, but it's what happens after I retire from the street, And so that leads me to another and final thing that I'll share with you about what I'm working on. And the Raised by Wolves series is one of the things I'm working on. The pilot script has already been done. And my producer from the Hip Hop Made Me, she's working with me on getting that brought to fruition. But that will be basically a combination of this book and this book. That's how that's going to work. And it's a little involved, but basically it's about a little boy named Little Vincent, who is me, and it's a combination of my father's name Vincent and my uncle Little Melvin. So Little Vincent grows up in a organized crime family in Harlem, born in the '60s and late '60s to an organized crime family, whatever. And it's about how he's taught and indoctrinated and designed, to be this very efficient machine on the street. And it's about how he, along the way, meets, as he's pursuing his own career aspirations, he meets all these different individuals who end up becoming the infamous individuals that rate being put into stories like this, right? And he ends up, after living that life and being a part of those people's journeys, and being ultimately being the facilitator of the situations or circumstances that gave them access to what ultimately became the basis for their infamy. So he at 14, Little Vincent, at 9 he moves to the Bronx from Harlem, and he meets a little Spanish kid a short time afterwards. And him and the Spanish kid hang out and kick it and ride their bikes and skateboards and all that, whatever have you. And then they don't see each other. You know, they spend a couple of summers kicking it or something like that. Then they don't see each other. Or maybe a summer they spend kicking it. And then they don't see each other for a while. And then the next time they see each other, like 14 years old. And now, you know, they're both in the streets. And when little Vincent sees the kid, you know, it's like, yo, what's happening? What you doing? It's like, yeah, I'm in the street now. You know, so, oh, yeah, that's what's up. You know, I'm doing my thing, too. And it's like, you know, what you fucking with? Well, you know, I'm fucking with the dope and all that, man. Well, how you doing? Well, I'm doing all right, but I could be doing a lot better if I had a strong and consistent connect. So I say, well, you got any money? Like, yeah, I got about 100,000. And it's like, okay, I'm going to make a call. So I don't want my mother or father or anybody, you know, to know. So I call my uncle, Little Melvin, in Baltimore. Little Vincent calls his uncle in Baltimore. And his uncle, he tells his uncle, we got a kid who's a good guy. He needs to connect and this and the other. His uncle said, okay, you know, does he have money? He said, yeah, he get money. He said, okay, I'm going to give you a number. You give him this number. You tell him when he calls, tell him that Black said that, you know, that he should give them a call. And, you know, then it'll go from there. Whatever. Tell him, don't fuck up. So then I give him the number, and he calls, and it's a Chinese guy, old Chinese guy, you know, and he goes to see this Puerto Rican kid from the South Bronx, goes to Chinatown and meets this Chinese guy, this old Chinese man who is a major heroin importer. And next thing you know, he becomes one of the biggest and most prolific heroin dealers in the city of New York. And, you know, becomes very famous and infamous and so forth, and riding around in Lamborghinis and all type of shit. He's 17, 18 years old, you know, having yacht parties and all type of shit. You know, his whole crew is all wearing, you know, diamond belt buckles with the name of their dope on it. You know, shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that stuff is real. Like, all that stuff, that's a true story. That's this guy's story. In this book so it's been a minute since I've been in this book. This guy right here. So can you see it? That is Boy George.
I gotta work on my poker face, but yeah.
That's Boy George. So Boy George is he's a infamous heroin dealer who made a lot of money very, very early in life. And he had a Chinese connect that all they know is he referred to him as fried rice, but they never knew who he was. He never told them anything. So they had no idea, you know, like how this young Puerto Rican kid was getting all this high grade heroin. So what I've done is I've taken these truths and these realities and I've interspersed them with creative connective tissue to create this alternate storyline, this alternate narrative where all of these stories are coalescing in some instances they're coalescing in the way that they actually did. In some they're coalescing in the way that it's being made in order to fit into the fabric of this concept, you know. So then Little Vincent ultimately grows up and retires from the game, and in realizing and doing his own introspection, writing on something that ends up becoming his life story, he recognizes that a great many people whom he's interacted with along the way had not made it. They were in prison forever or they were dead. And when you sit and you think about that, when you sit and start recording again.
You're a man of honor. I love that. Thank you.
When you sit and you think about, you think about your life in its entirety, it's not something that people normally do. So what comes of it is something that people are not prepared for or even aware of. When you start to look at your life, and as a whole, it's a different picture than the picture that you kind of continuously change to fit whatever that current narrative, your preferred current narrative is of yourself. Mm-hmm. So, whatever it was on average a person was into and thinking at 9, 10, 11, 12 is completely different from them at 15, 16, 17 in most instances. All right. If a kid is kind of developing normatively, not to say that if he isn't developing normatively, that something is necessarily wrong, but you know what I'm saying? Like in terms of the general influences of society and how they generally shape certain individuals from certain social and certain economical and certain educational backgrounds. Like, a kid that is growing up in New York City in the 1980s from the Upper West Side is going to see the same things that a kid that's growing up in Harlem is going to see in terms of what's happening in the world around him, but they will both be impacted by those things differently. They'll be influenced by those things differently. For one, it'll be, there'll be an attraction towards some of the more, murkier stuff. And for the other, it'll be more of a deflection, and based on the same stimuli, right? And, that dynamic is it's something that it keeps people from really being in tune with their truth, with whom they actually are, because they're staying in pace with whatever the surrounding influence is pushing or perpetuating at that particular time. They're staying in step with how things are changing. We used to wear flare legs, and next thing you know, we were wearing straight legs. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't an announcement. It was just kind of a thing that just kind of happened, and you stayed in step with what's going on, so you're just doing it. Right. And you're not really thinking about what this is indicative of, or how this kind of unconscious assimilation is it's influencing your overall process. And there's a saying that goes, how you do anything is typically how you do everything. Right. So if you're unconscious about the way that you're behaving or thinking or acting or talking based upon the fact you're being influenced by external things just to keep in step with what's going on, if you're not conscious of that, then you're probably not conscious of all the other things that come out of that as it manifests in your behavior, manifests in your personality rather. Right? So that dynamic, to me, it is something that is really important to put emphasis on, right? Drive attention towards, to bring awareness to, and I mean, that's I don't know how I ended up in this direction, but I get that's really that's really what I some of what I took away, a major aspect of what I took away from looking at my life in this, looking at this one big collage, you know what I'm saying? Like this one big, picture with all these different scenes in it, and saying, damn, I haven't thought about that in years. And now that I'm thinking about it, that didn't really go the way that I had peripherally, intimately recalled it. Right. now that I'm connecting it with what took place before and what took place after, as opposed to looking at it independent of what took place before and after.
Right.
It's not based upon me doing that, stringing it together. When you start stringing these pieces together, they start to take on different form because you've been interacting with them as independent, standalone, circumstances and situations, whatever. When we start looking at them as one big picture, it's like, okay, that doesn't really fit with what happened next. So what did actually happen?
Right.
What happened before? And it just starts reshaping.
What led me there? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you do, that's why I tell people all the time, I think everybody should write their story, write their life story, even if they never intend to publish it. Write your story as though no one's ever going to read it.
Right.
And like that's how I wrote Raised by Wolves, as though no one was ever going to read it. Because when I started, it was my autobiography. I mean, it was my personal journal, so no one was ever going to read it.
Man, thinking about that being translated into media, I'm not going to give away anything. We've talked about a lot of stuff tonight, but you haven't even like scratched the surface of the contents like that's in the book, and I'm glad because I don't want to rob anyone of the experience. But I'll just tell folks this: the book will catch you from the very opening part. The prologue alone for Raised by Wolves will catch you. And thinking about this like interconnected universe based in reality as opposed to the fiction that people usually tell, it's amazing, man. I'm happy for you and I'm proud for you. And thank you for doing this for me tonight.
Man, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this.
This is truly like my blessing, man, and thank you for pulling me off script, man. I was gonna just let it be a robotic interview and just get a chance to highlight you. But
to do that. most people have to do that because their subjects don't know how to keep it going,
Yeah,
so you have to be prepared to drag this dead body through this interview.
No. I'm not gonna let you do that. What it is actually, folks, is he's a journalist, right? So he wanted some semblance of control over the interview. I've seen him do this to a few other people during the interviews, and he's a master at it, man. He's an extremely intelligent man. But
he's trying to help.
and I appreciate it. And, this has been Cavario H, author, mentor, game changer, influencer, and I'm gonna let you take us out the way you end all your Mind Plug videos. Give us that beautiful quote, brother.
Okay. Peace, everybody. This is Cavario H, aka the Mind Plug. Remember to think critically so that you can live wonderfully. Peace
out.